Good late morning or early afternoon. Welcome. I'm Carl Edwards, and I'm the outgoing chairman of the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber and a partner at Price Edwards & Company. Thanks for being with us today. The Chamber organizes this quarterly luncheon for members who like to learn more about current issues in our city and our region. Today, we will get an inside look into the planning, construction, and strategy that took place in order to create one of the most recognizable buildings in Oklahoma City. The Devon Energy Center soars over downtown and has become a testament to the growth and expansion of this community. Beginning the process of developing this building that stands 50 stories high and spans 1.8 million square feet has to have been a daunting task, to say the least. However, the team at Devon Energy managed to complete their goal of a state-of-the-art skyscraper in only 3 years. Most importantly, they managed to build this impressive structure safely and securely. Our speakers today are responsible for the execution of this impressive building. After lunch, we will hear from Larry Nichols, the Executive Chairman of Devon Energy Corporation and a true leader in our community, and Klay Kimker, Vice President of Administration. We have a number of elected officials in the audience today, and rather than try to go through each one and make a mistake and miss someone, I would just ask all the elected officials to please stand up and be recognized. Thank you all very much for attending. I'd now like to take a moment to recognize today's series signature event sponsor, Cox Business. Percy, would you like to come up and give us a few remarks?
Thanks, Carl. You know, it's our pleasure to have the opportunity to sponsor this luncheon and really appreciate everybody coming here today. We're very grateful for the chamber that we have and the hard work that the staff and all of you as chamber members do to build a better business environment for all of us to operate. Boy, you guys picked a great lunch to come to. The other day when I was on a plane, I opened up the magazine and I saw that they were touting Oklahoma City. You probably saw the New York Times article recently. It was actually a big spread in the New York Times about Oklahoma City and everything that was taking place. You can't go through any of those and go very far without somebody mentioning, oh, and there's this brand new skyscraper there, 50 stories, 850 feet, and it's very impressive, and everybody talks about showing it off. But it isn't just about a building. You know, the reality is anybody can build a building. Okay, Larry, maybe not that building, but anybody can build buildings. It's really, the company is a different company, so it's an honor to have Larry talk about what's going on with how they built it up. And I'll tell you, if you had the opportunity to watch them in action, Larry, John, they're everywhere in the community. And the people at Devon are on about every committee you can have. So this is really not just about building a building that we point to, but it's about leadership and what you guys have done in the community. And we're very grateful for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Percy, and thanks for all you and Cox do for the city as well. Now we will enjoy our lunch and we will enjoy our speakers in a few minutes. It's now my pleasure to introduce our speakers. Our first speaker is the Executive Chairman and co-founder of Devon Energy, Larry Nichols. He has become a vital leader of the energy industry over his career, and through his chairmanship of the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber and all of the other things that he has done for this community, has become a vital leader of this community as well. Also joining us from Devon Energy Corporation is Klay Kimker. Klay serves as Vice President of Administration for Devon Energy and is President of Devon Realty. He is responsible for establishing and managing several departments at Devon, including aviation, travel, security, business continuity, real estate, and office administration. He held the title of Project Manager for the design and construction of Devon Energy Center. If any of you don't know what that means, he was the guy where the buck stopped and spent lots of time with lots of not only executives in his company, but also contractors, subcontractors, and lots of people involved. He has more than 36 years of experience in the real estate, finance, development, and construction industry. He is an expert in every detail involving business expansion. I will now turn the program over to the speakers. Please welcome Larry Nichols and Klay Kimker.
Thank you, Roy. Klay and I are going to sort of do a tag team here. He obviously knows a whole lot more about this than I do, so I'm kind of his front man. I don't know if you all know that, but that's the way it kind of works at Devon, and he does all the work. But we do have in this room a lot of other people that have done all the work. In fact, one of the interesting things on this project is we started and we're dealing with architects and site planners and landscape architects and interior decorators, and it went on, month after month, year after year, and I finally said, when are we going to meet the people that actually have hammers and are going to build this thing? Because I thought we were going to go on forever, and there are a lot of those people in this room. People from Holder are here, people from Flintco who joined together to build it. I know we have a lot of people in the city that we worked with very closely. We have city council people here, we have county commissioners here, we have our city manager here, we have people who helped move 400 loads of furniture into the building. So I would like everyone, I couldn't possibly introduce them all because I don't know everyone who's here, but I would like everyone, both in the government, elected officials, staff people, as well as people who worked on the building or involved in the building in any way whatsoever, please stand up. I know. You have now met the people who really had something to do with this project. To start off, let me talk a little bit about the site and how we started it. As we started looking around Oklahoma City, downtown, we never gave any consideration to anything other than downtown. We looked at every site, the Kerr-McGee building, the First National Center, vacant lots. We hired 2 different consultants, unbeknownst to themselves, to come in and look at Oklahoma City with a fresh look, because we all know that whether it's your house or your office or your city, you get so used to seeing things and not seeing things that only someone with a fresh look can come in and say, you know, you might move that desk over there or that table over there. They all came up with the same site. And this was this site in the where you now see the building. It really is a site that is, in many sense, it's a historic site, and then it was a part of downtown for a long time. This shows a postcard from the early 1900s. It says rush hour. Something else must have been going on. I don't know what it was.
Well, I have no idea what it was, Larry, but I think that's what it's going to look like when the Thunder win the NBA championship, and that should be pretty simple.
The site did have a lot of connections with trolley cars and cars and automobiles. You can see back in the far left is the, no, that's on the next one. I'll just go straightly to the next one. No, it is on this one. The far back building is the Concord. The rest of those buildings have all been torn down. This was a trolley center when it first started. Trolleys that went as far as from Norman all the way up to Guthrie. And this was the hub for our trolley system. It then was converted into a car park, and was a car park during the 1940s. And in fact, when we tore the site down, we discovered a couple of old plumes of oil that came from some underground storage there that we had to remediate. Nothing serious, but nevertheless, it did require some remediation. You can see that here in this site, too, of the Colcord and the other buildings that were torn down many a long, long time ago. When we looked at the site in modern times, it was the top of this old parking garage, the top of the parking garage that was going to be where the Galleria was going to go. It was not just a parking structure underground. It had these pillars sticking up throughout the site that were to be the foundation for the shopping center that was to go on top. So it was both an ugly parking garage, but it also was a reminder of a failure of the whole Galleria system, the whole big shopping center that was supposed to happen in the 1980s and never did. You didn't often think about it because it was long ago when you looked at that site, but that's what it was. It was a failed economic project that did not work. So it gave us a little joy to tear that down and start with something that was fresh. You can see from that slide, when we tore that down, we recycled virtually everything there. We removed 500 tons of metal that were recycled. All the concrete from that structure was ground up and recycled. Over 500 working lights, the neon lights that were there, were recycled, were given back to people to recycle in other projects. So we recycled virtually everything coming out of that site. Then we started the construction. And before Klay gets into the construction, let me tell you a little bit about choosing architects. There are only about 8 or 10 architects in the world who really build high-rises. We knew we were going to have to build a high-rise just because of simple math. We were going to move in and have what we have now, about 2,100 people and growing. We needed space for 2,800. We went through long forecasts that showed our growth by each department, which ones were growing, which ones were flat. Then worked with Gensler out of Dallas to do space planning. They'd done space planning for Devon in Oklahoma City and Houston and in Calgary. We worked out the number of square feet we needed, and you ended up with a lot of square feet. We considered one tower versus two. Two towers with the same square footage are more expensive than one, and two towers are less efficient from an employee standpoint rather than one. Now, there are certain functions that go better in a broad building, like our restaurant that is on the ground floor, like meeting space that you want separate from the security of a building, large training rooms that don't fit in the square footage of a large tower, a large marketing room where we move all of the gas and oil that Devon has any impact on. We're the 4th largest producer of gas in the United States. We handle a little more of that in just terms of gas we control and market for others. We're about the 8th or so producer of oil in the United States. So we got a lot of oil and gas to move around the country, and that requires big screens where you can see what's flowing and what's not, what area has problems and what didn't. Those kinds of functions need really large space that you don't put in a tower, which is why we created our garden wing, as we call it. It's a block long, 6 stories tall, very wide. If you took it and stood it on its edge, it would be the size of the Sandridge building, the former Kerr-McGee building. So it's a big building. It gets no respect because it's a long, flat building hidden by a parking garage and towered over by our own tower. So we knew we had to have a high-rise, so we started talking to high-rise architects. We eliminated several because they were busy. We eliminated a few more because they were snotty. We're all friends here. Well, you know, I remember visiting a few of them in New York with big names, and they said, well, we're very busy. We only have little buildings in Shanghai and Dubai, and this is where Oklahoma City, no, we're way too busy for that project. But we do have my junior assistant who's 23 years old. She or he can work on it, and I'm sure you'll like it. I said, maybe, maybe not. We eliminated a couple architects who had overblown egos that really wanted to build their building and didn't want to listen a whole lot to what we wanted, and narrowed it down to a handful of firms, which I then toured with. When I was in New York City or any place that they chose, we would go into buildings and Very educational. Walking into a building in New York City, and the one we ultimately selected would say, "Do you think this lobby works?" And I said, "No, it just doesn't feel right. Do you know why?" "No, I really don't." Well, here's why. Here's what they did that was wrong. And you go into another building, "Do you like the feel of this lobby?" "Yeah, I do." "Do you know why?" "Well, no, it just kind of feels right." "Well, here's what works in this building." So very educational process to learn what their thought process was, what they would envision. Came down to a couple of hard choices between three firms that were really excellent in quality that we really thought we could work with, and finally I had to choose. And what you see is what we ended up with. So Klay, let me turn it over to you and talk about the construction.
Well, going from this picture to the next one, you see a transformation of the same site. We began construction, and Gavin, of course, is sitting out here, Gavin Cayley, so he's going to correct me whenever I'm wrong, I'm sure. But we started in October of 2009 with construction, and the mat pour was in March, as I recall, very cold, wet, and windy, and there were cement trucks lined up, it seemed, from Guthrie all the way to Norman, like the interurban used to be, to deliver concrete to that site. As I recall, that was 15,000-pound concrete, and I think the DeLisi family had never ever mixed concrete of that hardness, and so it was a pioneering effort, I think, for Oklahoma. The mat pour was 12 feet thick, and as I recall, it was, being down near it, it was very, very hot. The concrete was curing very fast. It was very warm. Actually, the steam was coming off of it. 14,500 square feet in total area, and we poured 6,500 yards of concrete. In addition, in this scene, you will see that we had 4 tower cranes. We had 3 large cranes, this one being the largest, and one of the 3 largest crawl cranes in the world. It had built the Texas Stadium for Jerry Jones before it came to our site. And I can tell you that learning about cranes created a great deal of sleepless nights, not only for me, but for Gavin and our team. We don't mind mentioning this. We had 3 crane accidents on the job. 2 were human error. 1 was an act of God. No injuries of any kind, no deaths. Very rare, but cranes are very essential to a job, but also very dangerous. In the next photograph, you'll see...
Klay, let me interrupt and just tell. When we had those accidents, we got everyone together and said, this is really unacceptable, and met with the union and wanted to see the safety records of the crane operators. They said they didn't have it. We said we want to see it. Can I tell this, Klay? Am I going to get in trouble here? Maybe. Who knows? So we're able to get a list of all the prior employment of those crane operators and did our own research on what their safety record was. We're told we really could not have gotten away with that if we'd been in a place like Chicago that is heavily unionized, or if we were not in the middle of a recession where people needed jobs. And after we got through that process of vetting all of the crane operators, we decided which crane operators were going to work on this site and which ones weren't. And we did not have an accident after that. I might add, if any of you thinking of building a big building, a recession is a good time to do it.
In the next photograph, you'll see the 2 tower cranes, the 2 large tower cranes, one of which was over 1,000 feet above the surface. And those tower cranes had to be attached to the building after we got up so high. And that was important to the crane operator because in the early days they had to climb a ladder. It was very difficult to climb because it was a cage ladder. And in some cases, early on, it took between 30 and 45 minutes for the crane operator to get from the bottom to his cage where he could operate on the crane. And so as we went up and we tied it to the building, we were able to build bridges to get out so he could take the elevator up and then walk up a few steps from there, which is quite fascinating. Safety is something that we really, at Devon, take very, very seriously.
Let me interrupt you again. We're going to interrupt each other a lot. Interesting thing about those crane operators, everything that they need during the course of a day, or to say it delicately, everything to dispose of in the course of a day, they take up with them and they bring down at the end of the day. Tough job.
And you can use your imagination, right?
Yeah, that's all I'm going to say.
Safety is something that at Devon we take very important to us. We take seriously in the field. We've, of course, drilled wells in the deep part of the Gulf. We've drilled wells off the western coast of Africa, China, Azerbaijan, and we have experienced a great deal of learning process in terms of safety. And so one of the things we talked about to each of the general contractors we bid was safety. And Holder Flintco heard us loud and clear. They both had magnificent track records on other projects throughout the years, but they were attuned to our concerns. One of the things we did is we put one of our top Devon safety guys on the site, and he lived on the site, literally day and night, in a trailer for the entire job. He worked with the safety team at both Holder and Flintco, and our actuaries told us on the first day when we were sitting talking to them, said, Mr. Kimker, you know, you're probably going to experience 5.4 deaths on this job based on 5,500,000 hours. That's what we see happening. And of course, that's a sobering thought to hear. And so we really focused at that point. And our team worked so hard to make that happen. And those same actuarial professionals have come back to us and said, we have run the numbers. They are so low, incredibly low. We believe that your job, at the size it is, was the safest job in North America in the last 10 years. One of the things that Holder Flintco initiated was a warm-up. Well, you wouldn't think soft tissue injury, climbing ladders and lifting and carrying and welding, and yet this was one of the things I think that really helped us on the minor injury side. Another thing we did was Devon did an owner-controlled insurance program, OSIP it's called, rather than CSIP, which most products or construction products are always built with CSIPs. The general contractor takes the risk. But it was so important to us, we decided to do it in-house. And of course, again, Holder Flintco could not have been better to work with us on that. We opened a clinic less than half a block away so that injured workmen and women would not have to go to an emergency room where they had a cut finger, broken finger, or just dropping a bucket on their toe or whatever it was. That clinic operated with doctors and nurses around the clock, 24 hours a day. And I think from that standpoint, we were able to get some of the best and brightest workmen around the country, as well as locally.
The workers were told that, hey, look, the football players do this before they go to work. If they can do it, you can do it. So start your stretching.
One last comment on safety here is you can see the tether lines that run from the concrete to the belts on the workmen. Anyone who worked near the edge of the building was tethered in every case. You can see the struts, the aluminum struts that we used to support the concrete as we poured each floor. Each of those was tethered with a 2,000-pound orange line. And so just all of those things went together to create the safety record that we're so proud of.
Everything that a worker had, his hat, his hammer, anything he had on him was attached to a vest. So he could not drop anything that would fall more than a couple of feet. His sunglasses, everything was attached. Screwdrivers, whatever he was using was attached by a cord to his vest. His vest was attached by that feather to the building. And there were about 10 or so offenses that if a worker did, he was fired on the spot. And one of them was not being out in a dangerous space, not being attached. It was a harsh, immediate penalty, but it sent a message to the workers that we're not messing around here. There's certain things that are simple, that there are no second chances. Do it right the first time.
On this particular slide, I think the most critical thing, and we'll talk about the glass a little bit later when we have a more close-up of the curtain wall, but the rebar, 19,000 tons. That amount of weight, number 11 rebar that we put inside the concrete, the building's all poured in place concrete, varying from 15,000 down to 5,000 pounds of stress. But we put 19,000 pounds of number 11 rebar inside that concrete. So what that number signifies is if we had chosen to build a building with engineered steel structure, we would have used about 19,000 pounds of steel. So we have two frameworks. We have concrete and we have steel inside it. So everywhere we go, usually the first question people ask Larry and I is, how much does your building sway at the top? And our answer is about 18 inches. If it had been built with structural steel, as we built the Liberty Tower or the Chase Building, it would move about 3 feet at 500 feet. So much more rigid structure, much safer in our opinion. And then the one thing you wouldn't know unless you were on the site was that on the ground floor columns, you would have seen some yellow armor plate steel, the kind they use on tanks, 3/4 inch. We put the armor plate steel around the ground floor columns for added strength, just in case some untoward thing should occur at some point.
One of the things we were told early on is that the building would sway, but it would sway slower, so you wouldn't feel it as much. Unlike the Liberty or the other buildings that were built earlier that sway faster, and so you feel it. I wasn't sure I believed that until it sounded good. But one windy day when I was over at the Petroleum Club and could feel it going back and forth, I immediately raced over to the top of our building and stood there, and I couldn't feel it. That's how a simple geologist checks out what engineers tell you. This is a picture of the Rotunda. When we built the Rotunda, we knew we would hang stuff from it. So I gave, again, another geologic question. We're going to hang stuff. Make sure you got things up there to hang things from. And you see there our Christmas decorations that really we planned about 2.5 or so years ago. We started because when you started thinking of the Rotunda, we thought, well, you don't want just another Christmas tree. You know, it's not a shopping center. There are a lot of beautiful Christmas trees around town. Why do we want to add another big Christmas tree in the middle? Well, what do you put in the middle? And we asked a couple of people who specialize in that. In fact, why don't you tell them about that?
Well, after Larry instructed me to see if we could find some iconic items for Christmas that we could put up every year so children, grandchildren and great-grandchildren over the next 30 or 40 years would be able to come and see the same thing. We went to New York and San Francisco and looked around, and we learned that there are 3 primarily world-class providers of this service. And probably the most prominent is Stephen Stefano, who has done the Rockefeller Center for many years, which is extremely iconic, as we all know. And he has done the red balls. If you've been to New York, you've been to the Rockette show, you know the red balls at the Exxon Center across the street. He did those and a number of other things around the world. And so we began to tour various areas, see what he had to offer, and the other folks as well. And at the end of the day, his genius was absolute. It was head and shoulders really above the rest. And the result is what you see that we have currently in place.
We designed the Rotunda as sort of a town hall that would connect the various buildings that we had, including the tower. We wanted it to be totally open to the public. We didn't want it to be walled off from the city in any way. And you'll see that it has public entrances on the northeast, south, and west, which is the way we designed it, not really knowing which way the city would grow or how, but wanting to make sure you could approach the building and have it open to the public. Subtle areas that are behind security that you don't notice. The ground floor is open to the public. The second floor is, but the third, fourth, and fifth floors are not. And yet there's nothing that is apparent there that says, here's an iron gate, here you can't get to security. But the same thing with, if you've seen the infinity pool there, it was originally a long hallway going to the east entrance. And we challenged the architects to think of a way to open it up, and that big pool of water is both an attractive aesthetic feature, but it also is a barrier, because if you try to cross through that pool, in a good case, you're going to go across standing up, you'll set off some infrared beams, and you'll be wet up to your knees and be greeted on the other side by the guard who will have heard you splashing around and will have heard the alarm going off. In a bad case, since if you'll notice that the rocks down there are rounded, you will fall and you'll be very, very wet. So we wanted this as open to the public as we can get it. In the middle of the rotunda, the shape of it, if you look at that rock, and if you happen to be a geologist, it really gets its birth from a nautilus, a fossil cephalopod type animal that looks something like that if you cut it in cross section. In the middle, we had a little plaque that just says integrity, which is a message to our employees as much as it is to anyone else. Integrity governs every relationship that we have. There are a variety of ideas. We had lots of people who wanted to build statues there and various artwork. None of them seemed to fit until someone came up with, let's just have a simple plaque that says integrity. This shows the entrance into the tower of the behind the security. Again, we tried to make that as invisible as we can so that you could see right into the secure part of the building and yet still have the security guards there as necessary but as invisible as we can. An interesting part of the building was the glass. I'd always thought of glass as something you just go to Home Depot and buy. Not so. Klay?
I'd like for you to go back to the rotunda just a minute.
Sure.
I just can't resist interjecting this. It's an inviting place, and for those of you who have pets, we had a gray grackle who came into the building in March of last year. We would, in the evenings, open all the doors and windows, and he wouldn't go out. And he stayed with us until almost September, and he didn't want to leave. It was 100 degrees outside. He enjoyed it inside. He had food to eat. People were feeding him. He lived in one of the black olive trees in the rotunda.
No wind. He had a nice place to take a bath there in the pool. Through the Nebu restaurant, he was adequately fed.
And he wouldn't leave. He just wouldn't. And finally, there were several of us that wanted to just keep him. We nicknamed him Buzz. But at the end of the day, he was humanely captured and taken to Purcell, so he is now living on a farm somewhere in Purcell.
Actually, Klay and I do not know how he was captured or how he got out.
I only know what the security director told me.
The security guys said they got rid of him, and that's all they'll tell us. So Klay told you our story, and we're sticking to it.
Well, as you all know, when the building was bought out, the materials were bought out, it was a very difficult time. I think for 2 years, our project was the largest construction project going on in the United States, certainly, if not many other parts of the world. And one of the bidders was Permastellisa company out of Italy, a large famous curtain wall provider that in another time we would not have even had a bid from them, because before Dubai shut down, they probably had 15 crews working in Dubai alone. And they manufactured the panels, and actually Larry and I went to York, Pennsylvania in the middle of the winter, and it was really, really cold. I think I gave away 4 or 5 pairs of gloves and my coat, and we did testing on a mock-up of this curtain wall. And we had a jet engine there with a propeller on it, and we flooded the curtain wall, started the jet engine, tried to drive water through it from both sides to make sure that it wouldn't leak. And these people were really professional, really knew what they were doing. So they manufactured the panels in the United States.
Klay, let me interrupt. Sure. This firm in York, what they do is they test things until they break. I mean, this guy must have been a little kid who, went around the house with a hammer, because they have an old jet engine, and they'll take this jet engine and aim it at this glass wall and blast away, throwing water in front of it, throwing marbles in front of it, and they keep going until it breaks, and then they tell you, where its breaking point is.
Well, John Picard is a master of curtain wall, and those of you who have been to Kuala Lumpur and seen Petronas Tower, the 2 towers, which he did there, and other works, he really builds a beautiful curtain wall. And there are components of that curtain wall. But before we go look at that, I'd like to talk about the diamond on top of the building. Larry will probably have a story about that. But at any rate, that diamond, Mr. Picard worked hard and long. He came to Oklahoma City, spent a lot of time, and he realized that on First National, there is a diamond on either end that points to the sky, the point being to the sky. And so he designed this so that the buildings could speak to each other, that they would be compatible. And he came into the meeting in Houston, and he was just so excited about it, and he said, what did he say, Larry?
Well, what a setup. Okay, I'll pay you the $10. No, I'm sure you all have heard this story, but I'll tell it anyway, because he came in and we had models of the different buildings, and it was about time to select the basic style that we wanted. And he was describing this one, and it said it has this beautiful chevron up at the top. And this chevron is really going to capture. I said, no, I don't want that. And I said it so quick that he looked at me and said, but it's a beautiful feature. I said, I don't want a chevron at the top, or an Exxon, or a Conoco. Oh. I said, now, if you call it a diamond or a spade or something else, we'll talk about it.
Well, in the next photograph, you'll see a little bit more of a close-up, and some of the components, the large circular components at the top of the glass, do shade the glass in the summer when the sun is high. The fritted components, they're about 6 inches in length, that stick out from the building, have materials attached to them, baked into the glass, that also shade the material in wintertime when the sun comes around the building. And so that 6 inches actually reflects across the glass and helps to deflect the UV rays of the sun. The glass is low iron, very clear, but it's also high performance. There's 2 components, one on the inside, one on the outside, and gas filled in between to deflect both heat and cold and still allow a great deal of vision. Each floor has 144 of those glasses, and there are 805,000 square feet, which is equivalent of 16.8 football fields of glass on the tower.
When you look at that, the 2 things you might notice. One, there are bars that are horizontal. One thing I learned in building this is there's an expert for everything known to man. One of the experts that we had was the bird expert. He had a fancier name than that, but was a firm that you can consult with and make sure those horizontal bars are the right size, because I looked at that and I said, we're going to have the largest starling rookery in the entire Great Plains, and it's going to be a real mess. And so they brought in the bird expert to make sure those bars were just an uncomfortable size, and so far they have been that way. Another expert that we hired was the window washing expert. This was a firm, a little guy in Chicago who used to be a window washer himself and was having a confrontation with one of the building owners because his window washing equipment was banging up the outside of the building. And he told the building owner, it was built in such a way I cannot possibly wash the windows without destroying the outside of your building. Don't blame me, blame the architect. And so architects started consulting with him. And he said, this is a much better business than being out there washing windows. And so early on, when this exterior was designed, the window washing expert came in and figured out exactly what kind of platform he would build that would be compatible with this building so he could wash our windows without tearing the structure away. Entrepreneurial spirit.
We haven't really shared much about the interior of the building up to now because we were building it, and the concept that Holder Flint Co. presented to us in constructing the building was that we would occupy as we moved up the tower, and that allowed us to move much more quickly than we would have possibly done. There's a building in Calgary, same size, identical. The architect of which that building is one of the ones Larry mentioned earlier. We won't bring up a name, but they started 2 years before we did. We caught them. They're still not moved in. And they're building it outside in, finishing and then moving in. We built inside out, moved up occupied floors. We still had open space above us at various times. Holder Flint Co. Waterproofed the roof 3 floors above the occupation so that we wouldn't have water damage as we moved up the floor. It's quite fascinating. So now that we've finished, we can show some of the interior, and you can see that the interior has the same 10-foot glass that the exterior does. And it's part of the concept we referred to early on as right to light, that every employee at Devon has the right to the same amount of light, no matter whether the entry level or executive. And so the light spills over into the areas where some of our associates are housed in cubicles. And this particular design, you can see that there's material so that the eye-to-eye contact as you walk down the hall is broken up, and it really doesn't disturb you. Having been there for several months, I don't really pay any attention now to anyone walking in front of me. So that's not a problem. And you'll see that these walls are demountable. They're built by a company in Canada, and over a weekend, 2 weekends ago, we reconfigured an entire floor. No paint smell, no dirt, no trash, no dust, just snap, plug and play. So that has already proven to be outstanding. And this right to light concept is one of our 3 tenets for our new wellness program. This is the public space that we have on each floor, and we encourage our employees to eat lunch there if they want, or to have showers or parties or whatever they would like to have. And it's quite open. It's in a different location on each of the rise banks. This one, I think, is the low rise, so it faces west.
So rather than having a coffee room in an interior location next to the elevator, each floor has its own break room, coffee room that looks right out outside. One of the other concepts we had is a restaurant. We thought for a long time about what kind of a restaurant to build for our employees. I looked at an awful lot of corporate cafeterias, which are generally sort of like hospitals and other institutional places. There's a big square room in the basement that has zero ambiance that didn't seem, very appealing. So we asked the architects to come up with something that was open. We wanted it to be open to the public. We didn't, again, want it to be hidden behind walls. We intentionally built it of a size that not all of our employees can eat there, because we didn't want all of our employees to suddenly abandon all the other restaurants in downtown in which they were eating, because we would bankrupt a whole lot of nice restaurants. So it is built in such a way that it is both open to the public, but designed that not all of our employees can eat there. They have to go somewhere else even if they wanted to eat there. It's proven to be quite successful. When we first designed it, my concept was it would have a food court. We did a poll of all our employees and asked them, what restaurants would you like to see the most in our food court? And they came back. At that time, Panera was number 1. My favorite entry, though, we had room for write-ins. There were 3 people that wrote in Hooters. I don't know who those 3 guys were. I assume they were guys, but I know they were high-fiving each other on the way home that day. I told my wife that with a straight face until she looked at me until I cracked up and said, okay, we won't do Hooters. But we were convinced that the idea of a food court was a dumb idea for lots of reasons, and instead there are a handful of firms that you can hire that run these kinds of restaurant cafeterias where all the food is fresh. It's not like a cafeteria in that everything you get there is prepared when you get there. And they were describing how it was quality chefs that would be there. And I said, a quality chef? How will that work? And they described, and I think it turned out to be true, that there are people who want to be a chef, but they don't want to have a lifestyle for the rest of their life. They're working every night, that they never see their family on Friday or Saturday night ever, because they're down at the restaurant all day, coming back very late on Friday and Saturday night, and being gone every night. Not a good family life, but they want to be a good chef. So when you tell them you can be a quality chef at a restaurant that opens at 6:30 and it closes at 1:30, and you can be home by 2 or 3, and you only work Monday through Friday, where do I sign up? If that's what you want to be. And those are the kinds of people the Guggenheim, the firm that we hired to do this, does. It is very versatile in that there's a sushi section and a pizza section, and you can have hamburgers and pizza, or you can eat very healthy food. We identify the healthy food there with a little sign that says "well." We give our employees a 10% discount if they have a well meal as a little added incentive to take care of themselves. And it's proven to be really a very highly successful operation. The name, one other factor of it is that if something is popular or not popular, unlike a food court, you can change it. We were unclear when we first started out whether sushi would prove to be attractive, and it's a section of the salad bar. In our trial, in our soft opening, before it was open to the public or employees, when only a select group would go in, we invited on a roving basis 100 of the construction workers to go in. And it was interesting watching. They would leave with a hamburger or a pizza and a whole lot of sushi. They cleaned us out of sushi. They had the pizza or hamburger just in case, but they did like the sushi. NEBU stands for the Northeast Blanco Unit, which is a 33,000-acre federal unit in New Mexico that my father created in 1950. It was a highly successful gas drilling unit in the early 50s and 60s. In 1988, Devon took it over and figured out how to drill into a new formation that was a coal formation, and using new technology at the time, made it a major gas producer, dramatically increased the gas production a whole lot higher than it had ever been. We had a hotshot firm from Los Angeles coming up with a lot of names, and none of them seemed to fit, and one of our employees said, "How about NEBU? It's part of the family history, it's part of Devon's history." It was critical in both entities getting going. It was a major part of Devon in 1988, 89, 90 when we went public, and we said, "Good name, we'll go for it." So that's where the name kind of came from. This shows the inside of it. And then this slide shows the outside at night, where you can, anytime you're in that restaurant, there's glass, there's the trees that Buzz used quite regularly in it. We also built an auditorium that has a glass wall. This idea we borrowed and enhanced from the New York Times building that we saw when we were touring around the New York Times building in New York City, where they had a small interior courtyard and a glass wall on one side. So you didn't have that feeling like you have here and like every other ballroom, every other auditorium that I've ever been in, where it's enclosed and you don't know whether it's day or night. And this has a glass wall. It faces east, so we don't have to deal with the south or the west sun. And even facing east for a large part of the year, the sun is protected by our own tower. It shields this. And in case the speaker's really dull, you can look out at the activity on the guard. And it's not quite as hard on the eye and provides a little more interest and a whole lot more attraction than the typical auditorium. And of course, there's shades that come down and screens that come down so that we can block it off. Seats 285 people. This is the inside of the auditorium looking up. Around the outside, we have stuck a variety of little signs in odd places. One says, "Be curious." This says, "Act on your promises." There are a variety of little subtle messages that are not too preachy, I hope, that sort of convey wisdom that we all know but occasionally need to be reminded of around the outside of the site. And of course, up at the top is vast, our new restaurant. We labored at some time, we originally did not plan to have a restaurant up there, but so many people said, "Are you going to have an observation deck? I want to come up and see the view from up there." And we quickly realized that there was tremendous demand to see that view. We didn't want to hoard it all to ourselves. An observation deck has lots of problems, and so we decided to have a restaurant up there, and a restaurant, bar, private meeting rooms on 49, and then on 50, a banquet space for wedding receptions, what have you. That is all done under a contract with John Williams, who runs it I don't know anything about restaurant business, and it's too late to learn, so we have an outside contractor who runs all that, and hopefully is doing a good job. We then built a fitness center. Klay, you want to do that?
Sure. That's the third part of our new wellness program, the second part being, of course, NEBU. And the well is about 20,000 square feet gross. We did not build basketball courts because you have intramural basketball. I don't like to lose. I don't know anybody that does. You go back to your office angry with everybody you played against, and you're waiting for tomorrow so you can beat them again. We didn't do pools.
And Klay or I are not of a height that we're likely to win.
We didn't do swimming pools. We didn't do handball courts. What we did is we created something to make people happier, healthier, ties in with the food, ties in with the light. And basically, if you work out 4 times a month, it's free. 3 times or less, it's $15. There's just about every specialist that you can hook up with that will help you, whether it's weight training, cardio, and we take bio-screening so that we understand exactly what's going on and what we need to do to improve or help ourselves. And our EVP of HR has indicated to me that we have reduced our corporate spend on health care by $7 million in the last 18 months. Not to say that it'll continue at that rate, but it's a tremendous start, and we have focused on it very, very heavily. We're not going to be able to talk in great detail on this subject, but hopefully by the next time we make a presentation, we'll be able to tell you exactly what we have. But in trying to achieve leadership in environmental and in MAP or MEP, there are many levels, platinum being obviously the highest, and platinum is very difficult to get to. You have to do some things that just don't make sense. You have to have a propeller on top of your building. You have to have waterless toilets, and believe me, we tested some of those. You don't want to do that. There are also huge tanks where you collect rainwater. You have to have millions of gallons of water to water your park. And those things just don't make economic sense for the shareholders of a public company. But gold, the next level down, really does. You can get a payback on the things you do for gold. And so that was what we set our sights on. And we can't be certified until the last of the punch list items are done, but we're very, very close to having that done. And hopefully we can announce that very soon. It would be one of a very few buildings, particularly of this size and character, that would be LEED Gold.
One of the ideas an idea that Frank Hill with McAfee Taft had was, he called one day and said, "Why don't you create a TIF?" And I said, "Yeah, TIF, right. I remember that, but could you explain to me exactly what that is?" Tax Increment Financing District. And it was a means that we could take our tax dollars, go to the city and say, let's draw a line around downtown and let's revitalize all of downtown at one time. One of the things that I learned when we were giving architects, I had a little tour that I would take with the architects as we were narrowing the list down, and the landscape architects. And we'd walk through the Mary Gardens, we'd walk over to Bricktown, we'd walk around the entire downtown so that they could see the context in which they were going to build this building. And one of the interesting comments that they all made as we toured around the outside was that you in Oklahoma City have done a very good job building your buildings and revitalizing your buildings. The convention center, a little revitalization there, the new, now the Chesapeake Arena, Bricktown, tremendous job there, all the things that the earlier MAPS projects have done. But you've done absolutely nothing with the streets and public parks. I really hadn't noticed that, but once you walked around the streets, you'd see that, you know, in one block there would be 3 or 4 different kinds of payments that different people had done at different times. One of the comments that I heard repeatedly was that in any city, the streets win sometimes and the sidewalks, the pedestrians win sometimes. And you have to have that balance. And the comment was made in Bricktown, you have a nice balance where the pedestrian feels at ease and friendly. But in downtown, reflecting the times in which downtown was redone in the early 70s. The concept was you want big, wide streets that can get people out of town as fast as you possibly can, or into town, because no one's going to stay there and do anything. Hudson being the worst example, which was 6 or 7 lanes wide, and it was treacherous going from the public library across the street to City Hall because it was so wide. So we approached the city and said, let's create a district where all of our tax dollars will go to revitalize the public streets and highways. Most TIFs, they ask for part of it to be spent on your own property. I said, we don't need that. We'll take care of our own property. Spend this all on the public streets and parks. And the city, I think it's safe to say, was eager to do that. We've never heard of a city where at one time you had the opportunity with a consistent design and a consistent theme and consistent materials to do the city, to redo the core all at one time. We then realized that as the tax dollars came in, it was going to take decades for that to be accomplished. And not wanting to take decades, we then made a loan to the city of $95 million, secured by our own tax dollars, and of course they will issue bonds in due course to pay us back. The only risk we had in making that loan was that we didn't build our building. Well, that's on us. We'll assume that risk. So the city could tear up this downtown all at one time. Now, I can tell you that now, but there have been more than one occasion when I have been walking down the streets and listening to people shuffle and just said, oh, that city, I don't know, not confessing that we did have something to do with that. But the results, now that you can see them, I think are quite attractive. A large amount of the money was spent in the Myriad Gardens, which was amazing. In doing these tours, whatever time of the day or night we were doing it, or the season, there would never be anyone in the Myriad Gardens. And there would be a lot of people walking up and down the Bricktown Canal. The Myriad Gardens had a variety of structural flaws, big berms that you couldn't see in. One of the things that was pointed out to me was that if you stood on the corner there where the Concord Hotel is, and looked south down Robinson or west down Sheridan, you could not see an entrance. You had no idea where there was an entrance. You couldn't get in, and you had the berms kind of blocking it. So one of the concepts was tear those berms down, preserve as many trees as you can, put a lot of activities there so that there are things to draw people there. And you can see that happening now in spades. Instead of an area that is totally uninviting, there's a waterfall on that same corner I was just referring to that invites you in with a clear walkway telling you where it is. There's this new band shell, which is used an awful lot for different events. There is the children's rain garden, which is, if you haven't seen that fountain in action, you owe it to yourself to go see it. It's not operating during the winter, but it replicates a thunderstorm. I was there for the grand opening of it, and it was quite an interesting experience because there were mothers and families standing there underneath the shade, and it starts off with a little clap of thunder, and you could see people looking around, and then there's a little louder clap of thunder. And they'd look up, and people started migrating. They didn't know what was going to happen. They would migrate away from underneath there. And then a little mist comes down, just a little mist, as a rainstorm's starting. And then there's this loud clap of thunder and a flash of light, replicating lightning, and a torrent of water comes down. And the little kids are looking at it, and they're looking up at their mom, and they're looking at it. One sticks his foot in, runs in, then they all run in. And so it is a great fun event and very attractive. Children's Garden, the same thing. We moved the Devon ice skating rink, which had been in Bicentennial Plaza, using equipment that was rented that made a lot of noise, that was not particularly attractive. We built the new restaurant there with a built-in patio that also has a built-in freezer units, and all that is built in so that it's very easy to start the ice skating rink in the summer with no outside equipment making a lot of noise. This shows back to Devon, this shows the entrance off of Harvey. If you're coming to any event on our building, look to the far right. This is take-home information. Look, on the far right, you'll see the public entrance to to our building structure if you want to park. 2,500 parking places, is that the right number?
2008?
2,800. See, he has all the facts. And of course, the economic impact of this structure has been quite significant. They estimate 12,600 jobs in total. We're working on that. Another 6,600 of indirect, and an economic impact, according to an outside study, of $945 million, which certainly did not hurt a city in the middle of a nationwide recession. So with that, let's throw it open for questions, if there are any. Yes.
You have one pesky window in your towers. What is up with the window?
Good
Well,
question.
Actually, someone called me the other day from another building and said, "Are you building a porch on your window?" So one of the crane accidents, the last one, occurred on a Sunday night. We had been taking the tallest crane down, tower crane number 1. And of course, we don't have much wind around here, right? So we had a couple of good days, but we got to dark on that Sunday evening and headed down to about the 31st floor and had hoped to get it down the rest of the way the next morning. That night, an unexpected wind came through, and it was clocked at 79 miles an hour. And our crane was just sitting right on the edge of the building. And so as the wind began to hit it, the brake failed, which it's intended to do at 50 miles an hour wind. It's supposed to break loose, and obviously there's an operator in it at that point who flies it just like an airplane or locks it off and leaves. Well, in this case, the weighted part of the crane was on the back side of the crane on the north side, started to bang into our glass facade. It broke one glass, which glass scattered 3 blocks away. It was terrible indeed, but no one was injured. But it torqued the framework about 3 inches in on one angle and then a little bit on another angle. So our contractors had to go back in, assess the damage, ultimately try and figure out a way to replace the damage because we had built it all with components, whereas now we were going to have to go in, take it apart, and stick build it back. And so with the wind being what it is in Oklahoma, we can't get our window washing crane across the side of the building more than about 2 days a week. So Holder Flint Co. determined that they would build a work bridge, and that's what that unit was. It was tied to the framework of the building, and it extended out far enough for workmen to stand on the scaffold and work. And so I think we're down to 1 glass? No, it's all in. You got it in today. Okay. So we're all done. It took us about, under the process that we have always used, measure twice, cut once. You remember we've said that from day one. It took us about 6 months to figure out how to do it and about a month to fix it.
Good question. Other questions? Okay, oh wait, hold it. I like the colors. Those are LED lights, and we can make them any color we want.
360 different lights.
You'll see some of the gaps there. There's some electrical problems in some of those fins that they're working on, so the lighting is not yet perfected. The building's not finished. We still have a long punch library. They tell me it's not a punch list. It's a punch library. And that's on the punch library. We can make those any color we want, and sometimes it's obvious. We can make it thunder blue whenever the Thunder play. When OU and OSU play, Lord help us. I don't know what we're going to do. Probably go dark. Clay?
I just say be patient with us because, again, it depends on the wind. We're trying to get over the side, work on those every single day. Last week we were able to work 1 day. So we'll stay with it until we get it fixed, but you may see a few gaps in the colors for a couple of 3 months.
It sounds like you truly thought of everything when you were designing this, but was there anything that you weren't able to put in the building due to space, or it just wasn't going to work, or afterwards did you think, God, I wish we had, put this feature in?
I'm sure there is, but I haven't thought of it yet. No, we went about it in a fairly slow, I mean, we didn't ever give ourselves a deadline until we started building. We took a long time, as we saw each year when we do an acquisition or grow and expand into yet another building downtown, that we really need to get at this, and gradually started getting at it. But we had a long time to travel around the country, look at what worked, what didn't, and hire the best people. We could not have hired a better group of people to do all that. So I'm sure there's something, but it's not apparent yet.
I would say most people may not know this, but you and I do. We started on this project in November of 2002, so we had a lot of time to think about everything we could think of to put in the building.
But once we got going, as Klay said, we built it. We started moving in the bottom part of the building two and a half years after we started construction, which is rather remarkable. Thank you all very much.
Larry and Klay, thanks so much. It almost leaves you speechless. I know that the details are just, impossible to count, and you all have done a magnificent job of not only taking care of your own headquarters needs, but truly changing and transforming downtown Oklahoma City. Thanks so much. Once again, I'd like to thank our signature sponsor, Cox Business, for sponsoring today, and also our other sponsors. Finally, if you haven't already done so, please register for 3 important upcoming events for the Chamber. The annual meeting, December 13th, the State of the City on January 24th, and legislative breakfast on January 31st. You all, we're now adjourned, and have a wonderful holiday.